And welcome to the Citizen Report. I'm Jonathan Shannon, and thank you for joining me. As always, this newscast is real, in-depth American, so glad you can join me as I'm coming to you today from Tega Cay, South Carolina. If you don't know where that is, that's just south of Charlotte, but indeed in the great state of South Carolina, and at this point, a much freer state of South Carolina, at least when compared to North Carolina. I'm going to be getting into that in just a little bit. But I want to do something a little bit differently with this podcast today because normally I like to try to be information driven, and I do think I'll still have information that'll be useful to you, at least hopefully. But I wanted to kind of use this episode as an opportunity to have a little more commentary based, because frankly, there's a lot to talk about here about COVID-19 and the reaction thereof. But the first thing I want to cover is what's going on with North Carolina and South Carolina. So, in case you don't already know, North Carolina has now extended, and by that I mean Governor Roy Cooper, the dabble-do idiot of North Carolina. Yep, I just called him that because that's exactly what I think of him, among other things. But he just extended the stay-at-home order until, I believe, May 8th. And only then he will start to basically revise the stay-at-home order to allow more things. But in other words, he's not planning to lift the stay-at-home order. It's presumed anyway that he's not going to be lifting the stay-at-home order outright even then. Here in South Carolina, technically a stay-at-home order is still in play here, but the difference is that the governor here is already ramping things up. I believe he's actually launched an initiative called Accelerate South Carolina, Accelerate SC, and he's already allowing many places down here, stores that were considered non-essential, to reopen, and they have. Restaurants here, in terms of dining in, are still not allowed at this point in time. But in the neighboring state of Georgia, things are being opened up even more there, and I suspect that South Carolina will be going that route in a not too distant future. But in North Carolina, things are just kind of still shut down, and my concern, and I'll just say this up front, my concern with that is that many small businesses might not even come back in North Carolina because Roy Cooper, the governor, who got elected, I would personally argue, on questionable circumstances pertaining to provisional ballots. You can go look up the news articles that were put out around that time in 2016. But I digress. So Roy Cooper, the governor of North Carolina, he's basically keeping everything shut down, and there's been the Reopen NC movement that's just exploded in popularity. I have personally joined it by virtue of joining their Facebook group. And that movement is really taken off, and they're making their voices heard all over the country, really. And Roy Cooper doesn't seem to be giving heed to that. And it's unfortunate because we do have a situation where if he doesn't start reopening soon, if he doesn't start reopening right now, we could be in a situation, as I said a few moments ago, that many businesses might not even return. And frankly, for those who would argue we need to keep things shut down, you really just don't understand, because small businesses just cannot pause because they have their bills coming due, whether if it's rent for their, their small, where their small business is located, if they aren't home based. But even in that case, there's still bills on that front for them. And it's just unfortunate to see all this take place the way it is, because frankly, small businesses are just being punished in North Carolina with no mercy. And it's just really tragic to watch. And I think that those who argue unashamedly that we should just keep things closed down in perpetuity are frankly insensitive to them. And I don't care what they say. And there's no constitutional thing that allows for a small business to be ordered closed indefinitely on the basis of a supposed pandemic. And I'm going to get into that too as well. But I wanted to bring to your attention something that that somebody has wrote, spoken a lot about, a Stanford professor. And I first became aware of what this guy was saying by listening to the Mark Levin show on the, of course, he does a radio show and a TV show. But on the radio show, Mark Levin was quoting him, and I think it was brilliant. And this, I believe I've pulled up this guy that was making these statements. Now, I don't know if this is the same thing that Mark Levin was looking at, but this is the same person. But this is from the American Institute of Stress, and this is from Stanford's John P.A. I'm probably not going to pronounce this right, but Ioannidis, or an Ioannidis, anyway. This is what he said, and I want you to pay very close attention to what he said. And keep in mind, he said this was published back on March the 30th. So this has been out there for some time now, a good number of weeks. This is what the gentleman had to say. I'm gonna just take it from the top here. In an analysis published Tuesday, Stanford's John P.A. Ioannidis, co-director of the university's Meta Research Innovation Center and professor of medicine, biomedical data science, statistics, and epidemiology and population health, suggests that the response to the coronavirus pandemic may be a, quote, a fiasco in the making, unquote, because we are making seismic decisions based on utterly unreliable data. The data we do have, Ioannidis explains, indicates that we are likely severely overreacting. Let me continue. Here's another quote. The current coronavirus disease, COVID-19, has been called a once-in-a-century pandemic, but it may also be a once-in-a-century evidence fiasco, Ioannidis writes in an opinion piece published by Stat on Tuesday. Another quote. Draconian countermeasures have been adopted in many countries. If the pandemic dissipates, either on its own or because of these measures, short-term extreme social distancing and lockdowns may be bearable, the statistician writes. How long, though, should measures like these be continued if the pandemic churns across the globe unabated? How can policymakers tell if they are doing more good than harm? The woefully inaccurate data we have so far, the Meta research specialist argues, indicates that the extreme measures taken by many countries are likely way out of line and may result in ultimately unnecessary and catastrophic consequences. Due to extremely limited testing, we are likely missing the vast majority of infections from COVID-19, he states, thus making reported fatality rates from the World Health Organization, quote, meaningless. Patients who have been tested for SARS-CoV-2 are disproportionately those with severe symptoms and bad outcomes, Ioannidis explains. With very limited testing in many health systems, he suggests that selection bias may only get worse going forward. Ioannidis then zooms in on the one situation where an entire closed population was tested. The Diamond Princess cruise ship's quarantined passengers. While the fatality rate was 1%, he points out, the population was largely elderly, the most at-risk demographic. Projected out onto the age structure of the U.S. population, he calculates, the death rate is more like 0.125% with a range of 0.025% to 0.625% based on the sample size. Projecting the Diamond Princess mortality rate onto the age structure of the U.S. population, the death rate among people infected with COVID-19 would be 0.125%. But since this estimate is based on extremely thin data, there were just 7 deaths among the 700 infected passengers and crew. The real death rate could stretch from 5 times lower, which would be 0.025%, to 5 times higher, which is to say 0.625%. It is also possible that some of the passengers who were infected might die later, and that tourists may have different frequencies of chronic diseases, a risk factor for worse outcomes with SARS-CoV-2 infection than the general population. Adding these extra sources of uncertainty, reasonable estimates for the case fatality ratio in the general U.S. population vary from 0.05% to 1%. That huge range markedly affects how severe the pandemic is and what should be done, Ioannidis stresses. A population-wide case fatality rate of 0.05% is lower than seasonal influenza. If that is the true rate, locking down the world with potentially tremendous social and financial consequences may be totally irrational. It's like an elephant being attacked by a house cat. Frustrated and trying to avoid the cat, the elephant accidentally jumps off a cliff and dies. For those who argue that the high fatality rate among elderly people indicates that the death rate cannot be as low as 0.05%, the professor notes that even, quote, even some so-called mild or common cold-type coronaviruses that have been known for decades can have case fatality rates as high as 8% when they infect elderly people in nursing homes. And that's the end of that. And you can actually go online and look this up and see this in more detail because it actually provides a link to what he was saying. But I think that's a brilliant piece right there because he used a remarkable analogy, like a metaphor. You know, an elephant, being scared by a cat, like a house cat, and because the elephant is scared of it, the elephant accidentally falls off the cliff. And that's exactly what we're doing here, isn't it? We have all these states shut down. Thankfully, like here in South Carolina, and especially even more so in Georgia, people are starting to open back up. And I want to take this time to commend the South Carolina governor for at least being balanced, and as soon as he could, he's opening back up to some degree. I'm not saying he's opening back up 100%, and I would wish that he would, because frankly, we shouldn't even be closing anything at this point. And I just don't care what people think about that. That's exactly because the truth offends. And if people want to take offense to me saying that we should just have everything back open, I don't have anything to say. All I can say is the truth. And if people want to have an issue with that, then that's their problem. But in Georgia, the Georgia governor especially has been taking a lot of heat for reopening. And I want to commend the South Carolina governor. But I want to especially commend the Georgia governor for taking a hardball approach to getting things reopened. And I truly mean that. I truly want to commend the guy for being balanced in his approach and not keeping things closed any longer, at least not in totality like it had been almost. But I just wanted to appeal to those listening to this podcast. If we keep these things shut down, there may not be anything left to reopen. I mean, what's the point? What's the point? We're going to, like that elephant, getting scared by the cat and then jumping off falling off the cliff because of the cat. I mean, it's absolutely insane. This is exactly what we're doing to our economy. People are literally in absolute hardship right now because they don't have income. And there are reports out there that the $1,200 checks or, the payments are still not fully circulating. They're going around, but there are people still out there waiting. And you had these small business loans that ran out, You have Nancy Pelosi bragging about her stock of ice cream. I mean, she's an absolute... I better be careful what I say, but she is absolutely off the rockers. Repulsive. She's repulsive. She has lost her ability to even reason, if she ever had it. And she's just, she was bragging. I mean, how about this, Nancy? How about you get back on your private jet and come back to Washington? Well, I should clarify. Actually, she has been back to Washington now. But even now, she's like, oh, and I mean, these Democrats, these mugs, I just want to say to those, like here in North Carolina, for those who are listening in North Carolina, we need to throw the you-know-what. We need to throw that governor, Roy Cooper, out of office. It needs to happen this fall. We have a chance in November. We need to make it happen. You need to get on the phone, or you need to, at least on social media, basically say, I'm not voting for Roy Cooper. I'm voting him out. Something to that effect. We need to rally and start, making our voices heard. And I want to add my voice to Mark Levin's voice. And I don't, my podcast doesn't have my podcast is a tiny fish in a huge ocean, okay? But I just want to say, for what it's worth, that I'm adding my voice to Mark Levin's voice, that we need a new Tea Party movement. We need people to go around and demand our rights get restored, because our Constitution is absolutely being usurped right now. It really is. It really is. I mean, this is what they're doing to it's absolutely beyond the pale insane. They are destroying our Constitution, and we cannot allow this to continue any longer. Not for a moment longer. And I'm going to just say this on the record right now. I am personally not going to obey the stay-at-home order in North Carolina. In fact, let me just tell you a little secret that isn't a secret anymore. I haven't been. I've been coming down here to South Carolina to do my grocery shopping, at least over half, I'd say it well over 3/4 of my grocery shopping pretty much is in South Carolina right now. So there's the benefit that South Carolina is getting from the tax revenue, although they don't even charge for a lot of the groceries, which is even better. But we cannot, this is America. You cannot just keep people inside. This is something akin to the Nazis. And I don't care what people think. That is exactly what this is. We cannot keep people inside their homes under threat of being cited or arrested. And frankly, I'm just going on with my life. And I can guarantee you there's a lot of people doing the same thing. I am not unique in what I'm saying here. But I'm just saying right now, I'm just going to go on with my life as much as possible now. I mean, Roy Cooper, if he wants to go be the governor of Gitmo, for all I care, he can go ahead. Okay? That's just what I think of him. This guy needs to be out of office. The governor, he is doing such harm to North Carolina. We cannot keep this up and expect businesses to come back at all. We can't do it. We cannot do it. And you have the governor of Michigan as well, and she's basically doubling down on her. Basically, she's just kind of absolutely poo-pooing the protesters in Michigan. She's allowing, basically, if I understand right, you can buy pot in Michigan. You can buy lottery tickets. You can buy alcohol. But you cannot buy seeds to plant in your garden. How insane is that? These are the kind of tyrants that I'm talking about here. People need to, stop just going along with this. We know what this really is about. This is about destroying our republic. And if you don't believe me, remember that we have an election coming up this fall, and they failed on impeachment. They failed on a lot of things. And they really don't have another option now. They got to try to take away our rights. They're having to move up the timeline because, look, there was a 16-year plan to destroy America. If you don't believe me, go look it up. It's people have been talking about it. Obama was supposed to weaken our country. Hillary was supposed to destroy it, finish it off. But thankfully, and I truly believe God intervened and stopped it before, she didn't get into office. I mean, it really is a miracle she's not president right now, because I guarantee you, our country would have been in perilous danger had she become president. And I truly believe God has given us a reprieve right now in this country to take back our republic, because and here's another thing. I don't care anymore what people think. We are a Christian nation. We were founded as a Christian nation, and we are a Christian nation because our laws, our Constitution is founded on Christian principles. We're made in the image of God. We have certain inalienable rights that are our birthright. They're inherent. They pre-exist any government. It's absolutely insane for people to think that our rights come from the government. And that's exactly what we're seeing here. We're seeing a mentality, not that the government really wants to take care of us. They don't care about you. They don't care about you. We're supposed to be a body politic of self-governing people. And by that, I mean, we're supposed to just be, as citizens, we're supposed to, do the right thing, not harm our fellow man, and just go on with our life. That's the way it's supposed to be in this country. But you have these governors in these blue states that are trying to take away our rights. And it is so good to see that people are starting to wake up. Even some liberals, believe it or not, are waking up to this. And it's just like a hallelujah moment for that, because, when liberals are waking up, you know that it's getting real. And my purpose of this podcast, and I suspect this is going to be a rather short episode, the purpose of this podcast is for me to kind of just reinforce to the listeners or viewers of this podcast that you need to understand we have inalienable rights. The government has no say-so. And before you start suggesting, if anybody out there wants to have a fuss over, the stay-at-home orders, let me tell you something. Nothing can be against the Constitution and be valid in this country. And by that I mean, they can't order you in your house forever. Whenever there's has to be a temporary suspension of rights, it has to be narrowly tailored. It's been ruled that way. That's the way it's supposed to be. But this is not narrowly tailored. This is shutting everything down. And, too bad for you. Let them eat more cake if, you're not able to return to business after things reopen. And I just think that people need to, my purpose, my point in saying that we need to be, reopened, we need to make our voices heard. All I'm saying with that is, we can't just be anymore, like sheep being led to slaughter, where people are just, oh yes, I will obey my masters. And, whatever the master says, even if it means, taking a gun to myself. I mean, I kid you not. The mentality is so ridiculous. People, the way they're obeying these orders is ridiculous. Any order that is flagrantly against the Constitution is not even valid. It's only color of law. Color of law. It has the appearance of enforceability, but it's not even lawful, because the Constitution is the supreme law of this land. And again, this Constitution is, the essence of it is to restrain government, not allow it to exceed authority. The states get the remaining rights to govern or to the people. And look what we're doing though. We've got businesses that probably won't come back in some cases, and that number is only going to grow by the day that we keep things shut down. I mean, we can't keep this going on. We have to come back. We have to come back. And I just want people to I encourage you to go look up the Constitution and read it. Even better yet, if you can get a hold of a printed copy, all the more better. And all I'm saying is that people should have the ability to choose for themselves if we're going to stay at home or not. If people want to wear masks, if people want to wear goggles, if they want to, be socially distant from people, then yeah, they have a choice. They have a constitutional right to choose whether they want to do those things. But at the same time, the Constitution guarantees that you don't get to accost me and my rights because you're too fearful. And frankly, I'm just going to say this, and I say this as lovingly as I can. That I was instilled this a number of years back by a letter I got from a certain Christian ministry that basically, in essence, truth is only truth if it's spoken in love. So I say this as lovingly as I can, and I'm not perfect, but I say this here and now that I'm saying this as lovingly as I can. But we all need to stop being, and I'll tell myself this as I'm saying it to you. We need to stop being fearful of a virus. We need to trust God, and not worry about it. It's like last night, we had a tornado warning, for instance. Let me just use this as an example. I literally just got back home from being out shopping and getting some food. And I just got back home and I became aware there was a tornado warning. And basically the tornado, the rotation, now I am not aware of it touching down in our area, I should clarify. But the rotation on radar was showing it passing almost directly over our house. And I had just gotten home moments earlier by a few minutes. But, the thing I did, I'm not bragging. I'm just saying that, and I'm not perfect and not being fearful, but I'm just saying this to y'all as I'm telling myself this, that when I saw, because at one point it was showing it tracking directly towards our house, and I mean it showed the point of rotation on radar, the little icon, and the line was tracking, and it looked like it was going to come right over our house, if not very close. And I just prayed very silently. I just prayed, that God would keep us safe, that he would basically protect our house, protect our family, protect our property. And you know what? Nothing happened. We were fine. It passed. It may not have come directly over our house. I'm not sure if it did or not, but the rotational loft, as far as I know, it didn't touch down. But that's my point being is this. That's the kind of mentality we should have. We pray about it, we leave it in God's hands, but then we go on with our lives. We don't worry about it. We don't worry about a virus that you can't see. I mean, think about, can you even believe this? I mean, we're just keeping things shut down, and we can't keep doing this anymore. We're going to destroy our economy, and that metaphorical elephant is going to go off the cliff because of a little cat that he could just simply ignore. The cat will be there, and the elephant will just kind of sit there and be like, oh, nice little cat, and not do anything more than that. And certainly not go off the cliff. And that's the mentality we should have. It is time that we all go back to our normal lives. And if you're live in a state like I do, that there's a stay-at-home order remaining in effect, be peaceful about it. Don't do anything, ridiculous. But just, and certainly don't deliberately put yourself and others in harm's way, but just act normal. Just be good about your hygiene. None of us are perfect, but to the extent that's reasonable, be reasonable about it. But other than that, just go on with your life. Just go outdoors. And by the way, keeping everybody indoors is actually theoretically making things worse. So that's just another reason. We all need to go outside. It's a beautiful sunny day here in South Carolina as I'm sitting in my car recording this podcast. It's just a beautiful, I'd say either mostly sunny or partly cloudy. It's just a beautiful day, and we all just need to go outside and enjoy the day. And we don't need to be worrying about this. Trust God, leave it in His hands, and then but that's it. You leave it in His hands, and then you go on with your life. And let me say this as well. They talk about this new normal as if it's this most wonderful thing, this new normal where we're socially distant, wearing masks in perpetuity, indefinitely. And I'm going to say this here and now. In fact, I think that's what I'm going to name this podcast. The new normal is not normal. It's not normal. We were meant to be around people. We're, think about Adam and Eve before they sinned. They were in perfect fellowship with God. It probably was the most wonderful thing imaginable. Certainly in that point in time. And that's, we're supposed to be social people. We're supposed to be. And yet we're going to be just distant from each other. It's no wonder that suicide rates are going up. It's no wonder. And these governors have way too much power, in my opinion. They don't even have the legal authority to keep people indoors and cost their constitutional rights. And I want to commend the Department of Justice, in particular, Attorney General William Barr, for indicating that they will basically stand with those who basically, are, gonna, I guess, either sue or take some form of legal action or something to that effect against some of these government officials that are accosting people's rights left and right. And, we have got to go back to normal, folks. And that's really all I can say. We cannot keep this up. And I just want to say, none of us are perfect. I'm not perfect, but to the extent that you're able to, just pray, you trust God. Jesus is our Savior. And you just trust Him. You trust our Heavenly Father to take care of it. And you know what? You go on with life. You cannot worry about this. I mean, if we're going to worry about this, imagine if there was a real actual substantive crisis where that you had where people just falling over dead, stuff like that. How are you going to respond to that if, God forbid, something like that ever happened? And we're freaking out over this. I mean, we cannot keep this up. We have to go back to normal. And I know I keep saying that, but that's really just really what we need to do is go back to normal. And the new normal is not normal. We're not going to be socially distant. We're not going to wear gloves forever. We're not going to wear masks forever because it hides our facial expressions. And, it's just not good mentally, emotionally, or physically, ultimately, because think about it. You're just holding that carbon dioxide right against your nose and you're just breathing in that stuff. I mean, I never thought I would live to see a day where people would be, what's the word? And I say this again as lovingly as I can, and I'm not perfect even at that, but, they're just gullible, frankly. They're gullible. They believe everything the media tells them to. It's like somebody I subscribe to on YouTube says this, and it's funny, but it's also very much true. If you want to get rid of coronavirus, turn off the TV. That's, and I would say that at least in so much as the fear part. If you want to get rid of the fear, turn off the TV. I'm dialing back how much I'll watch TV. I'm still watching it, but I'm just not going to be spoon-fed propaganda all day. I'm just not. I'm going to trust God. I'm not, I'm not perfect, but I'm just saying to myself as I'm saying it to you, we leave the fear And don't even focus on the fear if you can. The better thing to do is actually just to say, God, I trust you to keep me safe. And you just realize, especially as you see yourself as being covered by the blood of Jesus, that that fear is just, you're going to find if you don't even focus on a fear, you just focus on Jesus, you focus on, all he's done for us, and, that he's our righteousness. If you focus on that he's our Savior and that he's our righteousness, then you're going to realize that fear is just not going to be there. Because he's got us covered. And, it is time we stop living like this. We can't keep this up. It's absolutely insane that we're just being fearful of a virus that is on par with the flu, if that bad. I'm sorry, but that's just what I think. Yes, there are people unfortunately dying, but, we don't know. They could have had a pre-existing condition, yet they're listing people as having COVID-19 as cause of death, even if they may have had it, and they're not even confirming it, which means they may not have actually had it, but they're listing it anyway. So on that note, folks, I just wanted to come on here on this podcast today and talk about that. It actually went quite a bit longer than I thought it would, but I wanted to come on here and basically talk about this in this fashion. Kind of just do kind of a commentary based podcast and just talking with you like a friend on this podcast. So on that note, I'm going to sign off here for this episode here from Tega Cay, South Carolina. I'm so glad you can join me, and do give me your feedback. If you want to reach out to me, I'm always interested to hear what you have to say, and please share this as well. I really, if you feel led to, please share this episode to those who you think might want to hear it. And on that note, I'll just remind you that our website, thecitizenreport.weebly.com, is a great way to catch up on our latest episodes, the more recent ones at least, and read a little bit about me and my co-host as well. And do get I'm on Facebook, I'm on Twitter at The Jonathan News. As I said, I'm on Facebook at Jonathan Shannon. Just look for my picture. I'm on YouTube under my full name, Jonathan Ryan Shannon. And, well, you probably already knew that, chances are, if you're listening to this anyway. But on that note, I'd like to thank you for tuning in, and I will see you right back here again on the next edition of the Citizen Report. Have a great rest of your day, everybody, and a great week ahead.
The Citizen Report is a production of New Shannon Media. All content protected under copyright.